It is part two of the Front Runner Football podcast, folks, as we end the week off with some more deliberations around what's been happening in the South African football space. And I'm joined tonight by Mazola Molefe and Veli Lemnyandu, with the other gents being subject, unfortunately, to a spot of load shedding. But before we go any further, just to kind of drive home how close and how proximity kind of makes COVID real, our fellow caster here in Veli Lemnyandu is on the mend as we speak from COVID. Veli, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm sure, you would have much preferred to be tucked in bed and wrapped in sheets and being warm. But we appreciate you joining us for the podcast tonight just to talk about what you're going through, because you tested when? About 2 weeks ago? And how's it going? How are you feeling at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Kamza. It's been very difficult, I have to say. The past 2 weeks, I tested positive for COVID-19. I think that was around the 2nd, but already by that time, because I had been in contact with my wife, who had already tested positive from the 29th of June. So that's when I started to really feel this thing, because I also went to test with my son as well, and it's been scary, man. Back from that time, even in terms of the symptoms, in fact, by the time I went to test on a Thursday, I was already feeling it in my body system, So I felt that testing was just a formality at the time, because almost all the symptoms that they were talking about, I could feel them.
Right.
So yeah, fast track now, from the 2nd until today, which is the 16th. Something like that I've been living with for the past 2 weeks.
Sure.
Some days I just wanted to give up, and go to the hospital, but fortunately, through the support of my wife, through the support of my family and friends, I was able to fight this thing, especially with the severe headaches, the colds, that I've been feeling, and at some stage, loss of smell, loss of appetite. There's more that I can just point out. I've been suffering from for the past 2 weeks,
right.
And at some stage, the doctors also told me to look out for the shortness of breath.
Okay.
At some stage, I felt that it was there, but I had to be vigilant around the time when there was something like that.
Right. Okay, well, man, we wish you a speedy recovery. It seems like obviously you're closer to being back to your best than you were when you got tested, of course. And thank you so much for joining us. Let's tuck in to what's been happening. As far as now, we've kind of got a sense from SAFA that, August, we're on. We need to get back into the groove, play football. But what's kind of strange, Mazet, is that as much as SAFA have said August is fine, the PSL released a statement and no new dates, only dates that we know about already. No new dates in that statement, even though SAFA have said, go ahead, you're good to go from the 1st of August. Why do you think that's the case? What's happening there?
Yeah, I think it's, I was saying earlier in one of our conversations with colleagues that, that this is almost akin to mudslinging now. You know what I mean? It's just a bit too much, because one, if you're going to release a statement, first of all, let's backtrack. The PSL chairman had a press conference, which we discussed on this podcast on Monday, later that Monday evening, where he alluded to the fact that there might be dates there are dates that were communicated to the mother body, which we then obviously said as we had reported, and there'd been a circular doing its rounds in WhatsApp groups, especially to journalists, that the dates are the 18th of July, which should have been starting this weekend with the Nedbank Cup. And subsequent to that, SAFA, I think it was on a Tuesday, then released a statement saying, well, confirming what we'd long been reporting, that it's, they prefer the first week of August because of referees and whatever. So my thinking was that if that's what SAFA are saying, if SAFA are saying, look, we initially had wanted to give the referees 4 weeks, but we've cut that down to only 2 weeks, and we are saying 1st of August they can be ready along with other compliance issues, then let's hold SAFA accountable on that date, and let's see if the PSL can make it work. But now the back and forth, people now speaking to the media on radio, this and that, it's mudslinging now. I thought by now we would just stick to the date and try to make sure that is exactly what's happening. Because here's the thing: SAFA keep publishing what they feel are facts, and the PSL, I'm afraid, even though a lot of people are beginning to feel like the PSL is holding SAFA at ransom, my thinking here is that we are seeing a lot of statements from SAFA, and they seem to have facts, if I can put it like that, valid facts, whereas the PSL are only saying the issue at hand is the referees, and there are now suggestions that SAFA does not want the PSL to come back. They want to cripple the association. Well, that's akin to hearsay, if we are talking about what's out there in the public, what's evidence and facts. So that's why I'm saying this mudslinging is confusing, and it leads to a lot of miscommunication between the two associations. I'm sure there's a lot that's happened behind the scenes, but my thing, and I stick to that, I think let's hold the mother body accountable to the 1st of August, and come that date, we must have football. If we don't have that football on that date, then we know there's something sinister behind the scenes. Then we can call them out on that. But if they're saying the only reason, there are only two reasons: the compliance of the said venues that will be used here in Gauteng, and the issue that referees need 2 more weeks to do testing and to be somewhat fit, because the argument is that they're not fit enough. But the PSL are saying even at 70% perhaps, they can get the job done. So enough with the mudslinging. Let's stick to one date, and let's get to it.
I guess, Veli, for SAFA, they'll say, listen, guys, we've made a commitment. We're saying 1st of August. Obviously, you have the likes of Ace Ngobo coming out and saying that, listen, referees are ready. I don't know what you guys are talking about. The referees stay ready. They're good to go. These tests, whether it be fitness or COVID, will take a maximum of about 72 hours to conduct and get done. So he's saying that there's no case on that side. But then obviously Mr. Motlante from SAFA is saying, nope, that's not true. We've got scientific proof that they need more time. If we talk about mudslinging now, there's more people joining the fray, with Ace Ngobo kind of, standing up for the referees and saying, hey, man, we've been ready.
Yeah, well, I think you will also have noticed that there are some mesh officials who have also been doing a lot of road work prior to all this mudslinging that we are talking about. I saw the pictures of Zakele Siwela, one of the top assistant referees on the continent. But I think we're always going to get a situation which we're getting now, where you have the FA saying this, and you have the special member saying this in the case of the PSL. But like Mazara is saying, I think now what we should take, the takeaway from the meeting of SAFA and the PSL, where SAFA is saying they will be ready come the 1st from the 1st of August. And you will have to recall also that the main target is to finish the season by the 31st of August. And we're talking about the ABSA Premiership, we're also talking about the Nedbank Cup, and you also add the Glad Africa Championship on top of that. So we're talking about more than 100 matches, which will have to be played within that period. And I think one of the good thing for SAFA and the PSL in this case is that in terms of eyeballs, would have been done with the EPL, would have been done with the La Liga, obviously with the Bundesliga and the Serie A. So in terms of the attention of the eyeballs, it will just be on the PSL at that time. What happens if this date now is also not met as promised by SAFA? Then I think that's where we're going to have the problems. But the reality is that if no further commitment is made, then we're going to have a serious problem, because we're talking about all those 32 clubs which will be looking for grants. We're talking about players whose contracts will be coming to an end at the end of August, So there's a lot of pressure now. That is not only for the PSL, but also for SAFA as well, because the referees also will have to be paid, and as much as the money is coming from the PSL, but in terms of the administration of the referees, that is being handled from the SAFA side. So I just feel that around this commitment of the new date, as from the 1st of August, a lot is at stake there.
I mean, what could be the stumbling block now? Because I feel like SAFA are kind of, nailing their colours to the mast by saying we've committed to this date. And my original question to you, Mazet, was that how come we haven't had the same commitment from the league for the same date? You know what I mean? So we've had SAFA come out and say, cool, August, let's go. And on the back of that, you would expect the PSL to say, cool, now that we have a date that's approved by the mother body, we're going to fall in line and make sure we're ready for that.
Well, I mean, I stand under correction here, but I think from the statements that I've read from SAFA, they are saying the reason why the match officials are not necessarily ready. And by the way, Tebogo Mohlante, I saw a story on IOL with Minenhle Mkhize that the whole thing about referees is a bit of a side issue. The issue here for SAFA is that PSL went ahead with giving the green light for return to training without consulting the mother body. And the mother body was supposed to play an overarching role as per the minister's note. But I think also the minister must be held accountable here. He is also to blame, because the minister, if information given to us by SAFA and the PSL is to be believed, is that the minister wrote a letter to the PSL and then wrote another separate letter to the league about compliance officers and around this whole issue of giving the green light to return to play. If the minister wanted SAFA to play an overarching role, he should have been communicating with the mother body directly. I don't understand why he then goes and communicates with the two bodies separately, because obviously that by nature that creates confusion. If Skamza, if you have a job for Veli and I, the two of us together, then you must communicate with the two of us together to get the job done together. You can't then phone me in the evening and tell me one thing, and then phone Veli the next morning and tell him another thing. How are we gonna come together and make it work?
Right.
So I think the minister also must shoulder the blame here, in that he confused the situation. I think if from the start he wanted SAFA to oversee the whole process, he should have limited communication between him and SAFA and let SAFA communicate with the PSL. So it goes back to answering your question that SAFA are now saying they were left behind in some of the processes to return to play. Hence the issue, the main issue here is the compliance of the return to training and the compliance of the training venues and the match venues that will be used when football does return. And then the issue of the referee as I said, the acting CEO at SAFA, suggests this is a side issue, because also with that, had they not been left behind, then the referees would have been tested and sort of been prepared for this bio bubble along the same time frames as the clubs sort of going into camps and going back to training to prepare to go into the hotels and the bio bubble before there's kickoff. So look, as Veli and I keep reiterating, if we are going to stick to one date, and we now have a date, 1st of August, let's stick to that. If we get to that date and there's another issue, then it will be clear that SAFA are shifting the goalposts. From here onwards, you can't then suggest that there are other issues outstanding. If you feel you've been left behind in compliance, the thing is, the PSL have said that they've complied with most of the ministers, the government's requests.
Yes.
So let's come together. Let's work together. A lot of other football federations across the continent and across the world are aiding their own leagues to restart, because it's beneficial for everyone. So this situation right now is not helping anyone. In fact, it's bound to cripple the industry.
I mean, Stavej, what is under SAFA's remit? Because it seems like they want to sanction every part of the process, where it kind of impedes the progress of anyone listening to what the government is saying and saying, cool, we can train. But now, you kind of you start and you're going as a team, as a league, and then SAFA like, wait, let's come back, let's start all over again. That doesn't seem to be in the best interests of getting the game going and back on our screens and onto the field of play, when they want to be able to tick off every single step, as opposed to saying, okay, guys, do the training, get your players up to speed. Once we get into things that involve us, which is where our referees come in, and the bigger picture, we'll start making sure compliance takes place from there. Or do you think they do need to sign off on everything from back to training all the way to kickoff on the first match day?
Look, I think the issue of compliance is a huge talking point here. I just learned today from a colleague who was talking about one club where 11 players, possibly including officials, were tested positive, but that information didn't come out. And this is also on top of another a club, I think 3 to 4 clubs, there were positive cases. They were also not reported. And and now you ask yourself, so in terms of the compliance officers, the information is supposed to be divulged to who? So, and this is where now you have these SAFA compliance officers possibly up in arms to say, this is what we're talking about.
Right. Right.
To say, these people have tested positive, and we don't have the information. There's no declaration coming from the clubs, and now how many more clubs might not be doing this?
Sure.
And we're talking about clubs which are on the verge of going to a bio bubble. So if this is happening now, what more? Because before getting to the bio bubble, you must have tested twice. And how many of these membership clubs would have carried this through? So I think these are all the questions these compliance officers have got. Remember, each club also is supposed to be having a compliance officer, and they are also supposed to be reporting to a compliance officer at the PSL, which is Michael Murphy. So you have all these stories leading to this thing. But then again, now besides just the clubs and all the members involved, the bubble of the referees, where is it supposed to be? So these are all the questions that SAFA will also be asking. But I think, like we've been saying with Mazola, now that the date is out, because the date is out. Even for this week, we had seen the date on the documents which were coming from the PSL to SAFA of the 18th. But now we've all resigned ourselves to the 1st of August, which for me is just like 2 weeks from now. So what is going to happen between now and then? Because like we had said earlier, there's a number of competitions to be played. There's the ABSA Premiership, there's the Great Africa Championship, there's the Nedbank Cup, and also there are playoffs as well for teams which would have finished in playoff positions, both at the top in the PSL and also in the Great Africa Championship.
Okay, I mean, was that to Veli's point where there's these murmurs of what's happening at clubs regarding testing, and can you somehow then sympathize with SAFA, who are saying that, listen, guys, we need to protect ourselves from you guys in making sure that we're as thorough as we can be in making sure that things are sorted and okay, and our people are saying thumbs up for you guys to be able to resume play. Can you sort of understand their position in that they don't want to be held liable for saying, well, we trusted the PSL to handle it, they didn't, now the blowback is on us?
Yeah, absolutely. If I put aside the hearsay that obviously the two head honchos, PSL Chairman Ivan Khoza and SAFA President Dr. Denny Jordan, do not see eye to eye, have not seen eye to eye for some number of years. If I put aside that issue, then 100% SAFA will be held liable by the government if anything should go wrong in the bio bubble. If there are compliance issues, if people get sick, if players and officials and referees and whatever, if that goes pear-shaped, then SAFA will be held liable. So I can understand if I were in their position and I'm being told by the government of the country that if this results in a rise of infections of some sort, it's on your watch, then I would want to tick every box possible. And if I'm being left out of crucial decision makings, if certain information is not being channeled through to me to be well aware of what exactly I am sanctioning, then of course I will put my foot down and want to know every step of the way what is happening, because we've seen the letter, we've reported on it, where Natim Tetwa writes to SAFA and says SAFA will play an overarching role. PSL were given permission by the minister to play an overarching role, and the minister said yes, SAFA has to have its own compliance officer, who is the head of all compliance officers, if I can put it like that. As far as the government is concerned, SAFA's compliance officer is the head of all compliance officers, the same way as Michael Murphy at PSL is the head of all club compliance officers, and gives them permission, the green light to return to training and whatever sort of other next steps they have to take. So the two must then meet and put their heads together and try and find a way forward to make sure that we meet the August 1 date. And if I'm not mistaken, I think today's statement by SAFA had suggested that the two had not yet met, which is a bit of an issue, because we are running out of time. I mean, if they have not met and it's Thursday, that's almost 1 week lost into this 2-week window period that we have towards the date that we are all anticipating.
Oh man, it's a crazy one. And then what's your take, gents, in terms of transparency as far as testing is concerned? You have some clubs that are more keen on being transparent, the likes of Cape Town City. Then you have other clubs who instead prefer not to be. Where should this kind of fall? On the side of it's up to the clubs to decide, or come out with it so we kind of have a sense also, it's because some clubs are taking the whole Trump approach, if you don't test, it doesn't exist, or don't tell us it doesn't exist. So, to get a sense of how bad a COVID problem the PSL has, surely we need disclosure from the clubs.
Yeah, look, there is this issue of confidentiality clause, the issue between the doctor and the client in this case. But I think if you've noticed, with most clubs, from the time they did the first tests, that's when they came out with the numbers. But after that, I cannot tell you. Very few clubs I can tell you and say, out of the 16 clubs, I can count that 8 clubs, they did a number of tests, and out of these tests, these were the negative and the positive tests that came out of it. So, but also, it also doesn't mean that because me and you were not aware about those numbers, that those numbers have been shared from people who was supposed to be seeing them.
So you're saying that the compliance officer, Mr. Michael Murphy, well, from the club to Mr. Michael Murphy would know?
Yeah, the compliance officer at the level of the club to Mr. Michael Murphy, and also possibly to Mr. Ngwenya as well, Dr. Ngwenya, and also to Mr. Ngame as well. They surely would be having that information, because partly to giving clearance for the clubs to resume training.
Sure.
The passport is supposed to be the number of tests which have been done and who has been cleared to continue with training, then leading to playing as well.
Okay. I mean, in that case, Mazola, I guess we're saying, fine, we don't need names. As far as numbers are concerned, at what point do you think that becomes of public concern? Veli's saying, as long as the compliance officers know and they know what's happening, that's well and good, because obviously that determines who can start and who can't. But do you think the public are owed anything as far as knowing which clubs are most impacted by COVID?
Yeah, I would argue definitely that the public deserves to, or maybe deserve is not the best word to use, but there should be a disclosure of this information. I think, and I've said it several times on my social media platforms, that we do not need to stigmatize this virus. We do not need to stigmatize the disease. We are in this situation now. We are going to live with this for some time. So if we are going to look down on people who are infected, if we are going to make it look like it discriminates whether you are rich, poor, black, white, Indian, colored, or whatever, I'm totally against that. I think it's complete rubbish. So clubs that are hiding behind confidentiality clauses, it does not make sense to me, because yes, as Veli rightfully puts it, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people about disclosing names. If some clubs decide to disclose names, then I applaud that too. If not, then that's fine. But absolutely, I think we should be kept abreast with the number of people, so that also as the public we are well aware, we are educated about this. As I said, I'm a big advocate of not us stigmatizing this. I mean, even in my own household, even in conversations with school teachers where my kids go to school, I am adamant that I will not teach my children to stigmatize the virus that we are bound to live with for the next year even. So for me, it's important. I think it's an opportunity missed for clubs to hide behind confidentiality clauses and to act as if this is not happening. If clubs are testing, then I think it's incumbent on them to be able to say to the public, yes, we are testing. Yes, we have 5 cases, or we have 0 cases, as it has been the case with some clubs. Cape Town City has been quite transparent about the whole thing. Maybe some might argue that they're transparent about it because they have 0 cases, but I don't want to believe that. I want to believe that Cape Town City has actually been one of the clubs that's been open about this from the beginning, even when they were accused of breaching lockdown rules and that kind of stuff, they were always forthcoming with information and willing to engage with the press about what it is that is happening. I mean, even as we speak, John Committees is the only club boss that I know that has spoken publicly about what has been going on the last couple of months in trying to get the clubs to play again. And so has, to be fair, so has Maritzburg United boss Farouk Kadodia as well. So look, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's not that difficult. I think, clubs are hiding behind all of this. I mean, Veli mentions a case where how can you possibly have a situation where you're about to go into a bio bubble and you have as many as 10, 11 cases and you're not saying anything about it? Who are you hiding it from? Who are you trying to deceive? What are you trying to do?
Because we're going to find out. We're going to find out.
Yeah,
I mean, those players don't pitch up to start the match.
This is not a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a joke. You're risking people's lives, for so that you can be able to get your grant at the end of the month. So you're willing to risk people's lives so that you have money in your bank account. I mean, it's hogwash if you ask me.
And then lastly, on that matter, Stavich, these grants, I mean, what's the, because I mean, that 30th of June date has gone past. What's going to happen now? Are we going to see some clubs kind of run into trouble with this, or there was murmurs of a fund being established where teams can maybe draw on an advance of sorts? Where do we stand with the grants? And in your mind, who are some of the clubs that are teetering on the brink, so to speak?
You will also recall that I think we've had 3, if not 2, BOG meetings ever since the end of last month, the 30th of June. The latest was also this week. And we've had, I think even from the press conferences this week, that if there's no commitment to play, and there's no playing that takes place by the end of this month or by the beginning of next month, then the clubs should be very worried about the grants come the end of this month. So, and this goes for clubs in the Great Africa Championship. This goes for clubs in the PSL as well. We're also talking about the ex gratia payments as well. That you on the way of the clubs as well. And this is where also now you have to factor in the issue of the club who've signed contracts with players. And most of those players, their contracts are coming to an end at the end of August.
Right.
So it's a serious problem, this thing. It's a serious problem. So that's why when you spoke earlier about the commitment to play, that is going to be very important. And part of that, the consultation process, the league has to do that consultation process with the South African Players Union, South African Football Players Union, and also with the sponsors as well, with the broadcasters as well. And these are all the things that they have to, the kind of engagements that they have to have before we can even talk about maybe no football taking place going forward. So it is not that easy, Kamza. You don't just play and then all of a sudden you have a grants coming from somewhere,
Yeah.
So and also the consultation process as well. That consultation process has to lead to all these things which we're talking about. I know that people will be talking about agents, but agents, they don't really have a bargaining power, in terms of the CBA. The CBA is between the league and the union. Hence, in this case, to talk about what is due to the players, what is going to happen to the players in the case of no grants being issued. That is something that has to take place between the clubs and the union. But I think we should be positive.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially about what's going to happen as from the beginning of next month.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, if all the sponsors play ball, including the broadcasters, this shouldn't be a big deal. But at some stage, the talking has to stop and action has to start.
I agree with that. And on a more lighter note, I want to end this on something completely different. Bongani Zungu being linked now with Rangers, Mazola Molefe, and I mean that, you know, for someone who's been looking for a move from Amiens, he's finally gotten one to a team that's you know, led by Steven Gerrard and in almost like a one-horse race league. But hopefully he's going to go and affect that a bit more.
Yeah, let's see. My understanding, obviously, is that you know, the two clubs must now you know, agree a fee. I think it's around 4 million euros or 4 million pounds. If that happens, I think, you know, before too long, Bongani will be a Rangers player. He flew back to France on Sunday. You know, obviously in anticipation of talks between the two clubs, and subsequent to that, obviously personal terms as well. I mean, I've been, you know, swamped with comments and the DMs from Rangers fans who want to know more. And I said, guys, when I know, I'll write the story. Right now, all I know is that the two clubs must agree a fee. Once that's done, and I don't foresee it being a problem unless things change. I mean, the player wouldn't have flown back if there were a possibility that this could happen.
Well, yeah, let's hope it happens, because it would be great to have somebody involved in the Old Firm derby who's one of our own in Bongani Zungu. Let's hope they can get that deal over the line. Gents, thank you so much for your time tonight. Stavech, to you and your wife, we wish you a speedy recovery. Mazet, to you and your family, stay safe. And that goes to everyone else who's tuned into the show. Keep your social distancing, wear your masks, have your vitamins, look after yourself. We'll catch up in the new week, when hopefully by then we have a commitment from both stakeholders in SAFA and the PSL to an actual date for the resumption of play. From myself, Gamzambata, take care.